Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second LGB roundtable discussion. This time, this is an all lesbian panel. We're joined today with Arianne from our group, Vikki from Voices with Vikki, and Debs, the silenced lesbian. In this episode, we will discuss everything you need to know about the Greater Than campaign led by Katy Faust, which seeks to upend marriage equality. So I want to just open the discussion by saying this is not something that we really wanted to have to talk about. Obergefell is settled law, and the fact that it is something that we are now having to revisit is upsetting would be a conservative way to describe that. It is unsettling. It is unnerving that this is something that we have to dive back into again. But like lesbians do, we will take it on the chin, we'll dive in, and we're going to get to the bottom of what we need to do. So I'd love to open the discussion for anyone who wants to jump in about what you're seeing boots on the ground. Vikki, you have a YouTube channel, and Debs, you've been in the trenches on social media, fighting back against the stuff that you're seeing. What is particularly problematic?
When I first heard about the Greater Than campaign, I didn't necessarily think it was that big of a deal. There's always these fringe groups that are out there kind of going after Obergefell from some angle or another. But what I noticed about this Greater Than campaign is that they're very organized. Their messaging is on point. They're even sort of co-opting the Human Rights Campaign logo. And it's something that has gained a lot of traction, a lot more than I thought it did, because when you look around in the field, in the internet field, and all these spaces, you see a lot of people parroting the messaging that they're putting out there. The big one is that all children deserve a mother and a father. And that's being repeated over and over and over and over again, kind of in the same way that the mantra trans women are women. And when you get into discussions with some of these people, you realize that there's a lot of stigma still and homophobia attached to same-sex parents in general, in particular homosexual men, gay men, and for their ability to have and raise children. We don't see it as much with lesbians, but you do see it. My biggest concern right now is that while we do have our rights and we are on the winning side, we hold the cards. We cannot get, for lack of a better term, cocky about this. And I think that we need to keep an eyeball on some of this because people are shifting their views a bit on whether or not gay people can have parentage rights.
Debs, you've done some pretty deep dives on the Katy Faust situation, Greater Than.
Yeah, I mean, before they were the them before us. And what they did is they argued reproductive rights across the board basically the way that they're framing this and how they're trying to attack Obergefell versus Hodges is coming from this perspective that every child needs a mother and a father. I think it's very important that we use slogans back, not necessarily as a direct against them, but every time that we hear every child deserves a mother and father, we can simply say every child deserves a loving home and a stable home, right? Because study after study proves that to us. I will say that in the first time in a very long time, I am concerned with the amount of homophobia. I would say that 10 years ago, I was more open within my sexuality than I am now, that I'm worried that if my daughter is seen with a baseball cap on backwards, that they're going to assume that I'm trying to indoctrinate my child. And I feel like we've allowed this to happen in a lot of sense because we've been so focused, right, on this ideology, which obviously has our attention, but there's been nobody at home, right? So we're all fighting out here, fighting, but there's nobody home to help guide these kids that are medicalizing and doing all this crazy stuff. So there is this pushback because what they're seeing is homosexual people bragging about their kids going to Pride, saying that my kids had dated them as theirs those. And so what the far right is seeing is that representation of us. So I think that in their attempt to change culture, we as homosexuals need to promote positive representation of homosexuals and our families. And going back to Barbara Giddings, that we're just normal people. We're average, normal people who have jobs, who are not caricatures, right? And that's why she said they gave us our rights. We need to go back to basics again.
I like that you brought up Barbara. She's one of my favorite historical figures, like hands
Yeah,
down. She's amazing.
yeah,
Uh,
yes, yes, yes.
in terms of what Katy has been able to do, when did her original campaign start? That was it 2018 or 4?
Well, this one, the greater than, started in 2025. It's been only a year. But the other one was over 10 years ago. Over 10 years ago, it started.
Do you happen to know how, like what's the pipeline? Like why did she go from this one campaign to the next one?
Katy Faust was raised by two moms. And her mother got divorced from her father when Katy was 10 years old. And she still had connection with her father, but then grew up and is now attacking same-sex parents, even though she was raised by same-sex parents. And she does say that she had a great upbringing and that she was brought up in a house of love, but yet apparently that's still not good enough. I don't know what happened. I think it was religious ideologies, perhaps, that brought her to this door, a husband, the family, the people that she associated with, and then, coupled with some trauma. I don't know how we got here.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we got here either. So I started reading the transcripts from Uncloseted Media's interview with Katy Faust. The person that's interviewing her mentions her mom being queer. And she is very quick to say, my mom's not queer. She never used that term for herself. She never called herself that. So in the same time where a lot of the things that she says confuses TQIA and LGB, in this moment she knows well enough that her mom isn't queer, that that's a slur, and that's not something she wants to have her mom associated with. So she's okay with like the word lesbian, she's okay with same sex, but she drew the line there at queer. So it's just it's so curious to try to like kind of dig into her mind what's happening. It seems like she has a lot of divorce trauma,
Yeah.
and the lion's share of the blame is being put on her mom being a lesbian, ultimately.
I just don't understand it either that she had access to her father as well. Like this idea that every parent needs a mother and a father when her father was present in her life. So that's another thing that just is confusing to me.
I'm curious about this, if it was maybe she and the other people in this coalition are perceiving some sort of opportunity here, which is why, they came out last year with this brand, with this organization. I'm curious if there's now a growing sort of second wind of optimism that the religious right is having. Because I know, like, way back in like 2000, shortly after gay marriage was legalized nationwide, I was reading about how the religious right felt very deflated and defeated. That they were sort of optimistic in 2000 around the Bush years, and then they felt like they lost, and now maybe they're perceiving some sort of opportunity now.
Yeah, I would agree with that on some level because, well, all of the ideology, the gender ideology that's been, floating around for a while, and the growing concerns about transitioning kids and all of that, I think really helps their case, and like kind of the "oh, we told you so," this big gotcha moment that they're having, and they're tying it back. And I've often heard that the religious right has always said that same-sex marriage is the slippery slope for all this other stuff we're seeing now, and they're blaming it on same-sex marriage. So it's giving them a new opportunity to go in for this, and they have more leverage, or they feel they have more leverage now because of some of the extremism.
I researched this and wrote an article about why, like, how to respond to the argument that gay marriage is a slippery slope, because it's a common one and it's an understandable one. But if you dig deeper at the history, it's not quite like that. But unfortunately, it's not an argument that I think a lot of us are prepared to handle, because you really have to dig into the history of the movements, but also like understand what was the motive behind, say, the movement for marriage equality. And a lot of people don't know their own history.
In this interview with Uncloseted Media, Katie says that she was glad that the Kim Davis case wasn't taken up by the Supreme Court in terms of like that was kind of what we were thinking might be the the tool that would get in there to try to undo marriage equality. But she says, I wrote about the Kim Davis case at World Magazine, and I'm glad that they didn't take her case because she was the wrong victim and they're asking the wrong question. And honestly, this is a problem that the right has had for a long time. Pro-gay marriage activists framed gay adults who could not get what they wanted in the marriage debate as victims. And the right framed religious Christians who wouldn't be able to arrange the flowers they want to arrange or bake the cake they want to bake as the victims. And the reality is adults are not the victims of a bad marriage policy. And so then she goes on about children. And so it comes right back to children. So the way that she's framing the whole thing is really, I mean, I think it's rude, but it's bothersome to me to think of it in that way of as victims of something. Like marriage equality is the whole thing of the 14th Amendment is parity under the law. And that's what marriage equality provides. Equality under the law. It's contract law. And so when we've spoken with lawyers in the past, Candace Jackson and Glenna Goldis around the Scrimetti hearings. At that point, there was talk about Kim Davis, and that was something that was very worrying for me. Was what's the potential here? And both of those women who are lawyers said this is contract law. It's settled law. This is not something that the Supreme Court is going to revisit. And then ultimately they decided not to revisit it with Kim Davis. So I'm curious if they think they have a better case. Like, are there more things in the courts or heading towards the courts that would be a stronger case than what Kim Davis was offering? Are any of you aware of any cases that are heading towards the courts or trying to be heard by the courts?
I haven't heard anything yet, but I think what they're trying to do is wait for the right moment and use something with surrogacy, something with parent rights. I'm sure there's things bubbling up because there's a lot of stuff going through the courts with surrogacy rights right now, and so I think they might be waiting to leverage something like that. And I think they're willing to let this be a slow grower. They're not in any rush to do this. I think that this is something that would likely happen maybe 5 years down the line or so. That's what I was saying earlier, that it seems so well thought out and methodical because they've got that, the 3 point markers, the step 1, step 2, step 3, and right now they're well into step 1, and that seems to be working so far, which is to kind of change the public perception of gay people. So I do think that they think that they have a better shot. And what I think is even more interesting about this is that they're using children as a political pawn, the same way that the far left used children as political pawns. So on the far left, it was, oh, these poor trans children are going to unalive if they don't transition. And on the right, they're saying, oh my gosh, these poor children are just complete victims and terrible families and incomplete upbringings, and we have to do something. So again, it's a case of using children and pretending to care, and that's my opinion. Because I don't know at the core of this they actually care. I don't know if there's actually heart involved in this rather than some other deeper agenda that's politically motivated and tied to money.
And they got it. The funding is definitely coming in. I kind of disagree a little bit with Vikki, not a lot, but only slightly. I think that it's going to take far less than 5 years, especially with the Gallup poll from May of already dropping so significantly in a matter of a 3-year time span, and the push of normalizing the hatred and disdain for homosexual parents, which they are pushing hard. I think it's not going to take long at all to indoctrinate the masses into believing extensive propaganda against the homosexual. They've done it before throughout our history, and they'll keep using those tactics as they did before. Their plan directly says change public opinion, and follow directly beside changing public opinion, directly below it is traditional and political strategy, which means that then once they change the view of homosexual in society, then they can start going for more of the legislation. And like Vikki said, right now we have a friend that we talked to that actually opened us up to a lot of this on getting us onto the Greater Than campaign, where they're going against these surrogacy rights that directly harm homosexuals. For example, something a lot of people don't realize is homosexuals do not have the same right as heterosexuals when it comes to parentage rights. For example, if a heterosexual couple uses IVF, right, and they're having trouble having a kid and they use IVF and the mom gets pregnant, the father has no biological aspect to that child. Now, because they're married, automatically, according to the law, that father, that male role model that's in that child's life, automatically gets parentage rights. Now, if the same situation occurs, let's say it's me and my wife who are legally married, and I decide to carry or my wife decides to carry, right? Let's just say I decide to carry. My wife would then have to fill out a guardianship as well as a step parent adoption. Now, I'm not saying we can't get those rights and that we have to work a little bit harder, but that's not equality. I shouldn't be having to do extra work and go to attorneys and pay for extra attorney fees for doing the same exact thing that heterosexual couple did and not getting the same rights. And so they're trying to change, they're trying to not allow the addendums to parentage laws. And because they're not being able to change the addendum, they cannot make it in surrogacy where it's showing the person carrying the baby and the one that's actually giving the baby. So I feel like their strategy is good. Their strategy is smart. I haven't been afraid of any of these campaigns, to be honest with you, friends. When Kim Davis came out, well, they ain't got nothing. They ain't got nothing. And sure enough, they had nothing. But this one got me stirred up. This one got me concerned. I was like, wow, they have a thought out, complete plan. It's called their 3-part strategy. And this is according to the campaign's founding letter. And it says the campaign wants to pursue legal and legislative efforts that center children's interests. This includes supporting litigation, legislation, and public policy aligned with its view of marriage, changing public opinion, mobilizing churches, right? And then overturning Obergefell versus Hodges. So this whole act about save the children is all about, we hate the gays, get rid of the gays.
I had no idea that was the case, by the way, about the inequality in the IVF laws.
Yeah,
And
I didn't
was not
either.
something I didn't know about. So thank you for bringing that to my to our attention. As for this 3-point plan, I have that concern about popular opinion. I guess in terms of the timeline, the question is when popular opinion starts catching up with Supreme Court justices / potential nominations for the Supreme Court. Because for a long time, I think conservatives, for conservatives, it was largely Roe versus Wade. That was the crown jewel that they wanted to overturn, and they got that. I don't recall Obergefell. So far, you have justices like, I think it was Alito saying, sort of hinting in an interview that they're not really all that interested in Obergefell. Thomas seems to be the one Supreme Court justice that really wants to go for it.
Yeah.
But I think it is true that even though Supreme Court justices are technically not elected by the people, they are receptive to popular opinion more than you might guess. And people who are I don't know how to put it, like rehearsals for being a Supreme Court justices, people who are not Supreme Court justices, people who might be like, for example, Circuit Court justices, their career is sort of a rehearsal for being a Supreme Court justice. At least that's what I've heard. And a lot of what they do is very calculated to improve their chances of making it to the Supreme Court. So if I were to wonder, like, if I were to keep my eyes on something, it wouldn't necessarily just be what the Supreme Court is saying. It would be like, what are sort of the hot circuit court justices that could be on the radar for a future conservative pick for the Supreme Court? Are there any movements there? You have to look down and not just up. It's something where we would need an actual case that works its way through the courts, or even, sometimes justices can hint at things on the side in their decisions that aren't directly related to the case. Like we saw that with the Dobbs overturning Roe versus Wade. You had the majority ruling, which said, we don't want to touch Obergefell, or this ruling has nothing to do with Obergefell. And then Thomas gave a concurrence saying, actually, I do want to touch Obergefell. And so there are probably people who are much more politically astute, lawyers who are looking through these cases. If there's even like a hint like that, that would be something to be vigilant about.
I'm working on my own campaign slogans.
I love it. So whatever their slogan is, you have one to match.
Yeah, like literally everything that, like, I've been arguing with people on the internet, but not really arguing. I'm just responding. I'm not arguing, right? I'm just simply saying every time they say a child deserves a mother and a father, I simply say every child deserves a loving and stable home. We just keep putting out the same stuff. It's all about the kids. It's all about the kids. We're protecting children, keeping children safe in their families.
Debs tips for protecting homosexual families.
Number one is lead with families, not fear. Show them what we look like every day, from school events, holidays, homeworks, birthday parties, and ordinary parenting. Show up loving families. That's the best response. The next one is emphasize evidence. Learn the studies. Study same-sex parented studies. There is studies spanning decades. There's the lesbian longitudinal studies. Learn the peer-reviewed studies. So when they come up and say, oh, this is what happened, we can say, no, this is what happened. So educate yourself on studies, become knowledgeable. Number three is promote legal preparedness. Know your rights, protect your family. The next one is respond to ideas, not motives. Share practical resources. So give people resources for law, organizations that support same-sex marriage and parents, which is the LGB Alliance. And then I have little sub things here, which is encourage civic engagement, like having these conversations and dialogue, have people contact their state and federal representatives, submit testimony on proposed legislation, support organizations that advocate for LGBT rights, and more importantly, build respectful coalitions. Now, I know that's a lot, and there's like 1,800 things here, but I feel like the way that we can go against this, like I said, is by showing up as who we are, right? Authentic, amazing parents that are full of love, that are just everyday people.
Thank you for that. I mean, you articulated all of that so well. Thank you too for drilling down to the most important thing, which is visibility. It's positive visibility.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately the goal. Like for the Alliance, our main purpose is to try to rebuild community, LGBT community, foster those relationships among us, but provide positive examples, positive images of what successful, happy, healthy LGBT lives look like.
I think that's a terrific list, and we should be spreading the word about it. I also want to say we need to really convince people why gay marriage is important for a lot of us, because there are some people, including people who are LGB and who are, broadly, what you would call gender critical or whatever you want to call it, who might agree with us on a lot of things, but there's some people like, gay marriage wasn't really that important. Or sometimes
Right.
you still get sort of the old school feminists, usually older radical feminists, who are still believe that marriage is a very patriarchal institution. And there's some movement on that. Like, for example, Julie Bindel from Great Britain, who's for a long time was saying she was skeptical of same-sex marriage because she thought it was patriarchal. She's now sort of changed her tune and said no, that she actually now is starting to recognize its value. So I think it's important to make sure that we get the message out about why so many of us care about this issue. And this isn't just like something we can sacrifice at the altar for some other cause.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I was one of those I don't need marriage lesbians. I fought for it, but I didn't necessarily believe in the institution. And that's why I've been with my wife for 25 years, but we've only been married for one. And almost all of us are married in this discussion. So Vikki,
I'm single.
Debs, and Debs is the only one of us that has kids. And that adds to your plate of the
Oh
things
my
that
God, yeah.
you
Way
have
more.
to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Way more. I have never been so homophobic in my life on myself. I'm not even kidding. Like all jokes aside, and I've been talking to Vikki about this, that there isn't a safe place for us to go because all this homophobia that we're fighting every day is very heavy because then you start gaslighting yourself and going, am I not capable of raising a man? Am I going to fail at being a parent? Those old self-limiting belief systems that society has put upon us, it's more prevalent today than I think than when I came out over 25 years ago. I think this is creating a negative impact on homosexuals and bringing back homophobia. Honestly, I don't want to say bringing back, experiencing homophobia in a way that I've never experienced it before.
Anecdotally, I want to just reinforce that you're doing a great job. I'm the godmother of a young man who's in his second year now in college of two moms, and he is so successful. He was like the valedictorian of his high school. He's a phenomenal young man. And so lesbians can raise fantastic children. Gay men can raise fantastic children. However much we need to hammer that home, please, take that with you. Like your parenting is not an easy task. Is not, and not all of I am not the child having kind of lesbian. I am the one that knew from an early age I was never going to have kids. That was not for me. But I am a great godmother, and that's where I feel good about that, and that's how we can contribute. I've heard a lot of homosexuals talk about kids are not for me, but I am here for the community. Here to help. It takes a village, whatever. It takes a town, takes a
Right.
village. Anyway, uh, just don't take any of this stuff that's coming from the
Like
outside on.
internalize it,
Don't Yeah,
right?
don't internalize that. That's not for you. That's what they want too.
Yeah,
They
I know
want
that.
to they want to sow those seeds of doubt, and that's not healthy. It's not healthy or helpful for you or for any of us that are out here in this world just trying to be. Yeah, it's gotta feel overwhelming because there's so many different angles that all of this is coming between the left and all of the crazy stuff, and then the right and all of the crazy stuff, and we're just trying to exist.
Just like literally like running through a crowd is split down the middle and our hands are like this over our heads as we're running through the crowd in the middle hoping nobody clobbers us, right? Like that's literally the analogy I'm using right now because me and Vikki, we're in the trenches. We do this almost every day. We are advocating for pro same-sex attraction. We are fighting against gender ideologies. We are abolishing these systems that are in place. We are helping homosexuals that are stuck in ideology by help. Like I remember this one, and Vikki will tell you about this one, where we had this lesbian person who claimed that they were a trans man screaming at the top of their lungs, I'm not a lesbian, I'm not like you, just filled with emotion. And me and Vikki just kind of paused for a moment, right? We just kind of took a breath and we're like, oh my gosh, this person is hurting. And we didn't go to that space of like, you're indoctrinating and appropriating and colonizing us. And instead we went to that space of like, we're here. We got you.
Yeah.
Like take our hands and we're going to help you through this process.
Well, and one of the interesting things about this is that I think some of the cause of this uptick in trans ideology and people thinking they need to transition, yes, they're internally homophobic, but the question is why? Well, how did they get that internally homophobic? And you know whose fault that is, in my personal opinion, on some level, is the far right. This very same people that are now trying to say, oh, you shouldn't have same-sex marriage. Oh, you're terrible parents. Oh, you're so awful, are the same people that helped along the extremism as far as the trans ideology aspect is concerned, because a lot of these people that are transitioning are just so deeply internally homophobic and hate themselves so much because they're gay, because they've been told over and over and over again that it's wrong. So I've been telling people that are far right, you know, you're partially responsible for some of this mess going on in the left. Like, yeah, the left has their hand in it and they have their accountability, but so do you. And so I think that that's something that when we had that experience with that person that we were speaking with, I mean, I'll be totally honest with you guys. We had to stop the whole live. Debs and I got on the phone together and we cried because we were so affected, deeply like affected by the reality of what's happened, that the homophobia has never gone away.
Yeah.
It's never gone away. And this person was so angry. They were so angry. And like I could cry about it right now, just putting myself back there. And there was nothing that we could say to this person, nothing we could do. And I was like, I don't think I ever hated myself like that. I don't think I ever felt that incredible weight and of shame. And like, I mean, the energy was, it was so apparent that so many people have slipped through the cracks in this. It's just terrifying.
I second that. And I'd also like to point out too, one observation I've made. I mean, I'm from an extremely liberal place. However, people who I've known who have done the trans thing, often their families are actually more conservative than what would be like sort of the median for the surrounding area, which is something I've noticed that's interesting. So just because it's almost like there's this weird interaction with the more liberal culture, with the more conservative culture, that seems to be a very toxic balance when it comes to the trans thing. The other thing, something you said, Vikki, a while back about like how conservatives now also are using the language of children's rights and how that's like their tactic about the new let's get rid of gay marriage and gay adoption sort of thing. And that does seem to undercut the argument they've been making in the trans wars about how important parents' rights are. Like parental rights has been, I have been on the trenches, particularly in California, which is, you know, a hotbed of a lot of this, you know, trans minors phenomenon. And it's been a huge problem where parents sometimes face the loss of custody of their children, or they don't have the right to know about what their child is what's going on in their schools with their children with trans identities. And parental rights has been one of the number one arguments that conservatives have, and not even just conservatives, but also just a lot of more gender critical types have brought up. And they're they're really undermining that now when they're going to go all full in of, well, actually, no, it's not really the parents' rights, it's the children's rights now with the gay marriage and gay adoption arguments. It's strange.
Yeah. And well, if you take a look at Canada, they, you know, there's like almost no such thing as parents' rights in Canada, from what I understand. Because they leaned so hard into the trans stuff, that they look at parent rights very differently than they do in the United States. And you do have a point that it does undercut it. And it makes me wonder if they really do have a case, or if that's what the thing is going to do to make it turn on its head, because it's sort of a contradiction to what they've been saying all along. And yeah, it goes back to just using children as the pawn. It's just how they're angling it and what their strategy is for it.
Yeah. The whole thing to me just feels so ludicrous, like to consider it.
Right. And I think that's why it's always been so important for us to distinguish ourselves from that other community. I mean, I've gotten to a point where I tell people that are TQ plus, congratulations, you have your own community. You can still continue to do what you want to do over there. I don't like it. I don't want to associate with it. So that's why we're over here. You know, so I think that building that up, and people are very much for that. The overwhelming response I get about that whole separation thing is mostly very positive, except when it's someone that's radical T, radical Q. Of course, they want to hang on to this because they want to ride the coattails, you know, as far as they can, because they're actually scared because they wouldn't know what to do without us. I mean, that's the honesty of it. But at the same time, what I'm seeing is, you know, it's interesting because when the separation thing happened, when LGB Alliance or LGB International announced it last year, it was nearly a year ago, there were a lot of really conservative people that were cheering us on. And so now I'm looking at those same people and I'm saying, are you now the people that don't want homosexuals to have kids? Like, are you the same people? So I'm still trying to sort out like who's who here and who fits where. But we are seeing a growing number of like the super gender critical ones kind of turning on us.
There's sort of like a hard turn and what I'd call more of a soft turn. There's the hard turn, which are people who really genuinely do not want same-sex marriage or same-sex parents. And genuine, like maybe they've always felt that way. But there are also what I would call the soft turn, which are people who just don't care about those issues. And so they're willing to sort of sacrifice them or just passively let them go out of apathy. And that I think could be just as ultimately just as harmful as the more active people turning away. Because when those numbers build up, you get a lot of apathy and we don't really have the fight anymore, and that's not good.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of fatigue also across the conservative, more or centrist conservative leaning side of just kind of being real tired of all of it. Just kind of seeing all of this and lumping it on together as a circus and just being kind of exhausted with all of it. And so it's important for us to differentiate ourselves from the circus. We also think the stuff that's happening is the circus. Don't associate us with that. Like that's not what we're doing. A lot of the conservative people that I know that in like gaming spheres and just nerd culture that are not trans. It's a very it's a line there as well. There's a lot of trans overlap. They tend to be very pro-gay. So I really hope that Katy Faust and her whole program here is clutching at something and trying to foment something that just isn't there right now. Because I feel like the conservatives are kind of on the not the ones that are in the trenches and that know this stuff. It's sort of how we are also it's our job to reach out to the LGBs that haven't peaked yet and to help them peak. So we don't want to poke fun at them where they're standing right now because we need them on our side. We need them to come on over. But I feel like that there's a lot of conservative normies that don't know any of this is happening and they do know that I'm their gamer bro. Because they definitely don't see me as just a normal woman. I'm just a gamer bro with them, and so they're going to be on my side, that kind of thing. So those personal conversations, those personal, to me, one of the best things that we can do is have those difficult conversations, one-on-one or in small groups, where we're just frank about what's happening because they don't know that we're fighting on multiple like the image of you like cowering your head and running through with people on both sides, Debs, like that's what it feels like every single day out here in the trenches doing this is slings from all sides. So but if they knew that that's what it was, and I think that most of them don't, they have no clue that there's this big infighting that's happening.
Well, that's why, I continue to talk about what I talk about, especially, on my channel and in all of these spaces and the spaces with Debs too. We continue to talk about the issues with trans ideology and all of that, not just because we're against it and we have issues with it, but within our community, but we also want to show the world that we are different and that we are getting hit from both sides. And when you come to that realization that you just feel like totally homeless. You're like, wait a minute, you guys are totally insane and homophobic, and you guys are totally insane and homophobic. So it just we have to rebuild is what we need to do. We need to go to the place of rebuild LGB and make it our own again. And people will come. We will just show up as we are, and people will come. They will. They will. And it's just spreading that message, and it's kind of building it from the ground up again. Like originally I thought, we'll just get all the TQ plus out of here and sweep it up and clean it up and it'll look good again. And then down the road, I was like, actually, we need to just leave that house where it is and build a new one. And so I think that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
That's a fantastic way to close out this discussion today. Thank you both for taking the time to join us today to talk about this, for doing so much work in the trenches, in comments and fighting. I saw one comment stream that Vikki was in the other day. I was like, that was a masterclass of dealing with trans activists. It was just beautiful. So thank you for all of the work that you're doing, for your work on the YouTube channels and TikTok. I think you're on TikTok, Debs. Like,
I just made a YouTube, so yeah, you can
in the
shout that out.
YouTube,
The Silence Lesbian,
so
you can find me on YouTube now.
we will
Vikki made
link.
me do it.
That's great, and we will link all of that stuff in the show notes as well, so that our audience can find you. But I'm so grateful to have this conversation, and hopefully we'll have some more in the future as well, if you're down for that.
Thank you
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it. We really do. And we glad that
very
you
much.
guys exist, because we don't know what we would do without LGB Alliance, honestly. I mean, I think that this is a really, I hate to say it like this, but it's like groundbreaking, to have a space where people understand that, you don't need all this ideology, you don't need all this other stuff. And I think it's going to just get better and better and grow from here.
Great.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you both so much, and we will see you in the next one. Everybody, please like, share, subscribe, do all those things. Hype the videos, a thing now, hyping videos. Uh, and be sure to show love to Voices with Vikki and The Silence Lesbian. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.